Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be looking at a combination of Barbarian and Rogue. Now I'm sure you're already thinking that doesn't sound like the smoothest of combinations. Barbarians need strength, and if they're raging they specifically need to use a weapon that is based off strength to get their rage damage, and the Rogue needs a finesse weapon which is usually used with dexterity. However, you just need to have a weapon with the finesse property, and the finesse property says that you can use strength or dexterity. So you actually can use, like say, a rapier. You can be a big manly barbarian using a tiny little rapier to stab people, and you can use that with strength. And as ridiculous as that may sound, it's perfectly legal by the way the rules are. Now, one of the things I like about this multi-class is that barbarians tend to really be good at killing things, and they tend to be not very good at everything else. And that's not to say they can't be. I'm just saying it takes a lot more work to build a barbarian who excels in some of the other pillars of play. They very naturally excel in the combat sphere, but not so much in everything else. But by adding rogue, we can get things like expertise. We can get things like cunning action, which can be very useful, especially in combat. Another problem barbarians tend to have is that if you aren't getting hit or hitting someone else, your rage tends to end. But being able to like dash as a bonus action or something like that can be very handy. Being able to disengage could actually be really good. In fact, we're going to take a look at specific use of that later in this video. So I do think that there's a lot of nice things there. You get things like danger sense, giving you advantage on dexterity saving throws as long as you can see the attack coming. Combine that with evasion, and now you're making that saving throw with advantage. If you make the saving throw, you take no damage. That's very, very nice. So I think there are some nice things there on the barbarian side. We're adding rogue. As for rogue, one of the biggest drawbacks is that in order to sneak attack, you need to fulfill some very specific criteria. However, if you're attacking with advantage, you can always sneak attack, and because you could just recklessly attack, you could always be attacking with advantage. Also, raging while using things like uncanny dodge to cut the damage in half, or evasion, whichever one, uncanny dodge, that's right, can be really, really good as well. You're cutting the damage half and cutting it in half again, and basically you're just not taking any damage, or very, very little. So I do think there's some nice stuff there. I think that unarmored defense combined with the fact that rogues tend to just wear light or, like leather or studded leather usually is what they wear. So just go on unarmored. You'll probably have a better defense, at least until you get to higher level where you would have gotten like, say, leather +3 or something like that. But for the most part, that's going to be pretty nice. I also want to say that while you probably won't do as much damage as a barbarian who would have gone with Great Weapon Mastery and maybe, either stayed barbarian or gone to something else, I don't think it's as bad as you might be originally thinking. Partly because you're going to have the sneak attack damage to help make up for it. Partly because you could potentially be taking an offhand attack, and then you're getting a strength bonus on top of that. You're getting your rage bonus damage on top of that. You're getting the weapon itself. And that does help to make up for quite a bit of that damage. Maybe not all of it, but I don't think you're going to be as far behind as one might think. And you're also going to be a lot more flexible. I think this could be a character with a lot more strategic choices. I have a couple friends who both played barbarians to a high level, and both of them had the same complaint. In fact, I actually did a video with both of them, and they both said they felt that barbarians were really good, like mechanically, but not always the most exciting class to play because your option was, attack or attack, and that was about it. And I think that being able to add things like a cunning action in there, being able to add some more strategic choices like hiding or taking the aim action or something like that, these things can start adding a lot more to the character. As well, of course, as being able to just excel in other areas. I also think that while you might not want to take the Great Weapon Master feat, I think that things like Shield Master feat might be a really strong choice. You could take expertise in athletics, and now you can try to knock guys down. You've got good strength, you've got athletics, you've got expertise in it. You just knock guys prone, and now all your buddies that are, now they all have advantage to attack them as well. So I think there's some nice synergy there there are a lot of places where I feel like the class does quite well. And then, of course, just because you're recklessly attacking, this basically doubles your chances of critting, which is perfect for any rogue, essentially, right? And even though your crit attack will be a lot, or your sneak attack will be a lot smaller because you're multi-classed, it's still going to be a hefty chunk of damage, and you're going to be critting on it a lot more frequently. So I do think there's some nice stuff there. I also, I mean, let's be honest, when it comes to Barbarian, Path of the Totem Warrior is really kind of in a class by itself. You have some other really strong ones like the Zealot. Some of them are considerably weaker in my opinion. But for purposes of this video, I really liked the idea of going with like the Ancestral Guardian Barbarian and then combining it with the Phantom Rogue. The Phantom Rogue has the ability to like steal souls of people they kill, or to like trap people's essence, and kind of has this like ghost thing where you can see and talk to ghosts kind of going on. And then the Ancestral Barbarian sees the spirits of their ancestors and stuff. And I think that'd be a really cool thematic combination where if you're looking for good roleplay reasons, I think that could be solid. In fact, I just kind of like the idea, I mean, I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go, but I like the idea of like a barbarian who maybe you're the last survivor of your tribe, and that's why you see their spirits and stuff, and they're trying to guide you, or maybe they haunt you because you failed them, or whatever else it might be. And I kind of like the idea of him like maybe being in a city, kind of like the fish out of water, but then he falls in with this criminal element who just think he's a big strong brute that they can like get him to do a bunch of their dirty work. And you know, adding a bit of rogue means you might be a little more cunning, a little more streetwise. And you know, you can lead a group through charisma, or you can lead a group because you're just the biggest, strongest, and toughest. And I think that works well in a criminal type of environment. So I just kind of like that character concept in general. I think there's something we can maybe work with there. Before we get too deep into this though, I had one of my subscribers says that one of his favorite things about my video are all my tangents and stories. So I have a great story from our game last week, which has nothing to do with barbarians and only like tangentially includes a rogue because he gets attacked. But so usually in my campaigns, I try not to introduce artifacts and relics. But this current campaign, the players are level 16. It's been going for quite a while. They're fairly high level. I've had a few campaigns that have gone to high level now because we just always play all the time, right? And I feel like artifacts and relics are kind of like the deck of many things. There's a lot of potential upside, but things can go really, really, really bad. But, you know, we've had a bunch of high level campaigns now. I've never given them any artifacts or relics. And in this campaign, I have a wizard. He's actually an abjurer, but he acts more like a conjurer because he's all about summoning demons and devils and stuff, right? And ever since Tasha's Cauldron of Everything came out, I've wanted to make sure that at some point he was going to find the Demon Omicron of Igwilv. And sure enough, the game before last, he finds the Demon Omicron. So, for anybody who's read the description though, or who wants to read it now, the book is pretty awesome, but one of the downsides of it is that there's a bunch of like fiends imprisoned in the book. And if you ever finish a long rest while being attuned to the Demon Omicron and you're on the same plane of existence, one of these fiends could try to possess you. Now, the player had already read the description, so he knew about this possibility. But he decided to buy the spell Demiplane. So he does a big search, finds somebody who's able to sell Demiplane, buys it, scribes it into a spell book. Problem is, though, he doesn't have it prepared yet. So in the one night in which he needs to take a long rest to change out his prepared spells, guess what happens? That's right, he fails a saving throw and gets possessed. And he even had inspiration, so he re-rolls his saving throw and rolls a 1. So he ends up getting possessed, and his eyes turn like all black, and he's all like got his book, and he's all like Smeagol with the Ring of Power, you know, with my precious, and you know, clutching his book bound in human flesh. Nothing to worry about there. Rest of the party, he's fine. Don't worry about him. Just clutching his book bound in human flesh. Perfectly normal behavior. But anyways, he ends up like locking the forest cage around the paladin, and then the rogue does a truckload of damage, but his abjuration shield absorbs most of it. So he ends up mazing the rogue next round, because of course forest cage doesn't require concentration. So he ends up casting maze on the rogue, who does get out. He needed like a 17 or better on his intelligence check and got like an 18 or something stupid. But anyways, he locks the rogue away, leaving the druid, who's mostly based around like healing spells and shape-changing into the most worthless animals she possibly can think of just to annoy her party members, I think. And then the artificer, who of course is mostly dedicated to being as mediocre as possible. Sorry, Jaden, that's not. It's kind of true. You know what I'm saying. Anyways, oh, and then they also have this NPC warlock, who's actually a player character from a different campaign from a guy we used to play with. So I just wanted to reintroduce this character because this campaign was tying into that one, sort of. So they finally ended up managing to kill their wizard and then revivify him. The warlock, or sorry, the artificer had to cast Revivify, though, because the force cage is still around the paladin, because it doesn't require concentration. It just lasts an hour, no matter what. So she was just locked away. So the artificer cast Revivify on him after a debate, which was much longer than the 1 minute you would have to cast the spell, but that's all right. And they chose to actually bring him back to life. The player didn't seem to care. He's been expecting this guy to die for a long time, which is probably a good attitude to have when you're constantly casting like summon greater demon and stuff. Sooner or later things are going to go wrong for you. But they ended up saving him, bringing him back to life. And as I pointed out, though, I'm like, you did use your only 8th level spell slot, though, on Maze. So you'll once again have to finish a long rest before you can do it. But then we remembered that actually the warlock had demi-planes, so I guess that'll solve that problem. Either way, I just thought it was funny. Also, there's this added layer of comedy because the player playing the mage, in the last campaign, he was playing a arcane archer who got possessed by some or charmed by some demon queen, and then immediately decided to attack and action surge on that party's wizard and killed him in 1 round of combat. So this is the 2nd time in a row now in which he's turned on the rest of the party with hilarious results. No long-term damage. They were able to bring him back to life. No big deal. Anyways, that was just all a huge giant tangent because I thought it was funny, and I don't like PvP when my players are attacking each other, but it is a lot more enjoyable when it's not their fault, so that helps a lot. Anyways, possible breakdowns for this. I kind of like the idea of having more rogue levels to preserve as much sneak attack as possible. I think that just 2 levels of Barbarian for reckless attack might be a solid build. But I also think that taking 3 levels for subclass, 5 levels for extra attack is a decent possibility. And if you wanted more Barbarian, I think 9 levels of Barbarian gives you your brutal critical of 1 die. Now, it's not as good as more sneak attack die, but it's not nothing, right? And you also move up to a +3 bonus from your strength, which isn't bad. Barbarian 17 gives you a 3rd critical die and a +4 bonus, by the way. And I think that's not a bad call either if you wanted to go a bunch of Barbarian and just have a little bit of Rogue. But I think most campaigns you're never going to get the 20 usually, unless you're playing constantly. And then, it's probably not going to matter as much. But I did like the idea of, I'd at least wanted to talk about some of the level breakdowns. In general, though, I'm probably going to want a bunch of Rogue, but I might want 5 levels of Barbarian just for extra attack. And yeah, you can only use the sneak attack once per turn, right? So that's not really helping as much on that attack. But it is just more damage, and if you're raging, that gives you just another hit with a bunch more rage damage added to it. If you're using 2-weapon fighting, that could give you a 3rd attack around, which is now applying that rage bonus and your strength bonus and everything else, right? So, even strength bonus, you'd have to have 2-weapon fighting for that. But whatever, you know what I'm saying. Either way, I think there's some potential there. As for the actual Barbarian, like I said, I wanted to talk about the Ancestral Guardian because they have one really, really nice ability and they get it at level 3. And I think it's especially good with this kind of build. Oh, I should also mention that I think this build would work very, very well in a campaign which doesn't allow feats. Because, if you're worried about not competing with Great Weapon Master, well, a lot of campaigns don't allow feats, in which case something like this is going to be really good. Because even though I think Shield Mastery is a great choice, you don't need it for this kind of build, right? It's not integral or anything like that. Anyways, Ancestral Protectors at level 3. While you're raging, the first creature you hit with an attack on your turn becomes the target of your Spirit Warrior guys, which hinders its attacks. Until the start of your next turn, that target has disadvantage on any attack roll that isn't against you. And when the target hits a creature other than you with an attack, that creature has resistance to the damage dealt by the attack. If attack ends, if your rage ends. So in other words, you hit a guy on your first attack while you're raging. He now does half damage to anybody who isn't you until the start of your next turn. So here's another possibility. What if you attack him, do some damage, use your cunning action, and then disengage? And now he's either forced to pursue you, in which case he's probably going to eat some opportunity attacks, or attack one of your allies, in which case he's only doing half damage. I like that combination as well. I think that adding things like cunning action to the Barbarian really start to give you a lot of strategic choices. And while, like I said, maybe on a pure numbers standpoint, you might not keep up with, Great Weapon Master plus 10 damage to all your hits, but I think that there's a lot more strategic use for a character like this. And I think that that could be a lot of fun. It's nice to have options in combat, right? Level 6, you get like a shield thing that eventually can reflect damage back. Not too worried about that. Level 10, you can get Augury or Clairvoyance to use out of combat. Not bad. But I'm probably stopping at like 5-ish. Maybe even level 3, right? Depending on how hard I wanted to get and how much of sneak attack I want. As for... Let's see, is I going to mention some part? No. As for the rogue, like I said, I like the idea of the Phantom. Again, Assassin might be a really strong choice as well. I'm not saying Phantom's the best, but I do like that kind of theme, of like dealing with all these spirits and stuff. And now it's not just your ancestors, the people you kill as well, and maybe you just got, you're like the kid from The Sixth Sense, except you're not actually dead. Spoiler alert for a 30-year-old movie, but whatever. You just see dead people all the time. Nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly normal. So level 3, you get Whispers of the Dead. Whenever you finish a short or long rest, you can choose one skill or tool proficiency that you lack and gain it as a ghostly presence shares its knowledge with you. And then you lose it if you use it again. I like the fact that you can just pick any proficiency or skill, or like tool skill. It's very flexible. You can change it out over the course of your campaign. I think that's a pretty decent ability. You do have to finish a short or long rest in order to use the ability or change it out. So it might require some planning, but even still, I think it's pretty solid. You also get at level 3, Wails from the Grave. So immediately after you deal sneak attack damage to a creature on your turn, you can target a second creature you can see within 30 feet of the first creature. You roll half the number of sneak attack die for your level, rounded up, and the second creature takes necrotic damage equal to that total. And then you can use a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. I don't mind this ability at all either. Just some extra damage to a different target. Nothing wrong with that. You were going to be sneaking attack anyway. You might as well just do some damage to something on the side, right? Level 9, Tokens of the Departed. This one's long. Sorry, bear with me. Whenever a life ends in your presence, if you can snatch a token from the departing soul. Basically, as a reaction, if a creature dies within 30 feet of you that you can see, you can open your free hand and cause a tiny trinket to appear there, a soul trinket. The DM determines this form by rolling on the trinket table. No one cares about that. You can have a maximum number of soul trinkets equal to proficiency bonus, and you can't create one while at your maximum. So you can't just make one and destroy another one. You have to actually use it. So the trinket has 3 different things you can do with it. Number 1. While it's on your person, you have advantage on death saving throws and constitution saving throws. Not bad as a barbarian, especially if you start barbarian, you're already going to have a good con save. You're going to be proficient. And this really means that, between your advantage on your dex saves, advantage on constitution saves, being able to make a lot of straight checks with advantage while raging, and having expertise on a couple different skills, you're going to be really, really good at a lot of this stuff, and you're really not going to fail. Anything you're supposed to be good at, you're going to be excellent at, which is fine, right? I know some people don't really like that kind of doubling up. Oh, I'm already good at that. But there's nothing worse than needing a 3 or better to pass your con save and rolling a 2. It sucks when you're like supposed to be good at something and you just constantly fail at it. But anyways, ability number 2. When you deal sneak attack on your turn, you can destroy one of your soul trinkets that's on your person, and then immediately use Wails from the Grave without expending use of that feature. So Wails from the Grave is the one where you did your necrotic damage to a nearby target, right? Pretty good. Like I said, just more damage for free. Nothing wrong with that. Number 3. As an action, you can destroy one of your soul trinkets no matter where it's located. When you do so, you can ask the spirit associated with you with the trinket one question. It appears to you and answers in a language it knew in life. It's under no obligation to be truthful, and it answers as concisely as possible, equal to be free. It only knows what it knew in life, determined by the DM. Now, this ability I have some kind of problems with. The fact that it doesn't have to tell me anything truthful, it could actually lie to me, that gives me a lot of room for the DM to kind of screw around with my character. On the other hand, though, one thing that I think players sometimes overlook is it also gives the DM room to like kind of cheat and help you out. Because, let me tell you from experience, there's lots of times when your players are stuck and you really want to keep the story moving forward, but you don't want to just hand it to them. You want them to like work for it and earn it. And this is the kind of thing where you could be like, hey, wait, what if I ask one of these spirits? And the DM's just like, oh, thank goodness. Yeah, the spirit tells you what you need to know, kind of thing. And now you can keep the story moving. And it doesn't feel like you really had to hand it to you. You still had to do some work. You had to sacrifice one of your soul trinkets. That kind of stuff happens a lot, actually. Or at least it happens a lot in games I've played in and games I've dungeon mastered. You know, sometimes the players just need a little helping hand. And you feel guilty if you just hand them the answers. But if the players have something like this, it gives you an excuse to hand them the answers, and nobody feels too gypped about it. You know, you feel like, yeah, that was a good idea. Good idea to use that ability, you know? Anyways, level 13. You can partially phase into the realms of the dead, becoming like a ghost. As a bonus action, you assume a spectral form. While in this form, you have a flying speed of 10 feet. You can hover and attack. Rolls have disadvantage against you. You can move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, but you take 1d10 force damage if you end your turn inside a creature or an object. You stay in this form for 10 minutes or until you end it again as a bonus action. To use this feature again, you finish a long rest or destroy one of your soul trinkets, so you can use them multiple times. Now, 10 feet of flying speed is not a lot. However, I'm not saying it's completely worthless. There's nothing worse than being a barbarian and not being able to get into combat because the stuff's like 30 feet above your head or whatever, right? And then you gotta hurl a javelin at it. Who wants to carry javelins? Those things suck. We all know it. But you know, you could use dash as a cutting action, and that'll help you a bit. Plus your movement, you know, you can get some movement out of it. Not saying it's the best, but it also can help you to like explore things. You could phase through walls or doors instead of having to cast the kick spell and hope that your foot is mightier than the door. You could just phase right through that door. And, you know, I think it gives you some nice exploratory options. I'm not saying it's a great ability. The 10 feet of movement is very, very limiting. But it is a fly speed on a class that normally doesn't have access to fly. You know, I'll take it. And, you know, you can even do cool things like phase through the floor of a dungeon and explore the level below it. Level 17. So if you only took 2 or 3 levels of Barbarian, this is still on the table for you. Whenever you use your Wails from the Grave, you can deal necrotic damage to both the first and the second creature. So that's nice. You sneak attack this guy, right? And then you deal more necrotic damage, equal to half your sneak attack dice, to him and to the other creature. So now it's just even more damage on top of everything else. I like it. At the end of a long rest, a soul trinket appears in your hand if you don't have any soul trinkets, as the spirits of the dead are drawn to you. That ability, I think, is almost worthless, to be honest. I mean, you can get soul trinkets really, really easy. It's not like you can only capture a certain number of days. Just anytime something dies near you, you can capture its soul, and as long as, you know, I mean, only one reaction, right? But you can once per round on your, you know, as your reaction, you can be capturing souls. And as long as you don't try to go above your proficiency bonus number, you're good. So I don't perceive a situation where you're going to be just like always running out and needing to, like, you know, finish a long rest in order to get a soul trinket back. But whatever. Probably not as good as, say, the Battle Master, always recharging one of his superiority die, but it's in that same kind of ballpark. Anyways, I do really like the idea of just being able to add some of these other features to the Barbarian, like I said. And I like the idea of being able to just not have to worry about whether or not I meet the conditions of sneak attack. Oh, I have advantage? I can always sneak attack as long as I have advantage, right? And, you know, if you have super high initiative, you're not having to like hold your action and then try to go later and stuff like that. So I think it's pretty decent. I also wanted to say really briefly, if you look at Conan the Barbarian, right? Probably the most prototypical barbarian of all time. Like, he's who we think of when we think of the Barbarian, right? But the movie Conan and the book Conan are very different in a lot of ways. If you read the books, Conan was a very stealthy, sneaky guy, and he's described as being a thief and a warrior and everything else. Like, Barbarian really isn't Conan's class. Barbarian is like his cultural background, essentially, right? It's what he was before he became Conan, essentially, you know? And, you know, he does a lot of like thieving, sneaking type stuff in the books, a lot. And then also, of course, is an amazing, amazing fighter, right? So I don't necessarily think that this is necessarily a bad fit. I feel like this is kind of what Conan probably was. He was definitely higher on the Barbarian side, probably, but I think that this kind of could work. And he was, you know, he's using a lot of different weapons and whatnot. But, you know, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. I think this could be a really strong build. I've never seen anybody actually play it yet, so this is all just theory crafting. But it seems like it would be pretty solid. And I think it would be a lot of fun because of all the different options you have in combat. And like, rogues just tend to be a fun class, in my opinion, right? You got a lot of things you can do in a rogue. And then just being able to add like rages and reckless attack on top of that just means you're going to crit more often. You're going to get to double up all those sneak attack die, you know. And especially if you only took like 3 levels of Barbarian, you're only going to be a couple of dice short on your sneak attack. And that's really not a big deal in the long, you know, in the grand scheme of things, right? So I think there's a lot of potential there. It just seems like it'd probably be a fun idea to try out. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble again and losing focus, of course. So I think we're going to end the video there. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and leave me all your comments. Comments are my favorite thing about this. I love reading people's comments. I love hearing people's ideas. People like, you know, even people like, you should have combined this subclass and this subclass, you know? It's like, oh man, I never even thought of that combo. That's a great idea. But, you know, that's why the comments are there, so we can, like, talk about it more and explore it in more detail, right? And to get other people's feedback. Because right now, you're only getting my ideas, but this gives me a chance to get your ideas too. So feel free to comment as much as you want. Anyways, that's everything I have. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.